Welcome to IVF This, episode 69, IVF'ers Like Us with Jackie. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. I'm a mother to two beautiful and feral boys. I'm married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, 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 my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing phenomenally well today, or whatever day you happen to be listening to this, which would then be your today. Anyway, I have a lovely, lovely guest on the podcast with me today. Jackie is a client that I had throughout the fall, and she has recently started her IVF cycle number 2, I believe. And so we're talking about some of the really specific hurdles that she's gone through and how coaching impacted her along her journey. We met after she had finished her first cycle and she was waiting for an upcoming transfer. And then after we finished working together, she started her second cycle. I do want to give a trigger warning right now, here and now, that we will be talking about termination for medical reasons. If that is something that is going to hurt your heart, or if it's going to trigger you, or if it is nothing that you want to hear, absolutely fine. You will get plenty of other content from me, and this might not be the episode for you, and that's okay. I still love you, and I know you still love us, and I just want to give you that warning, but I also want to give you the permission that you don't have to sit through anything that's going to make you uncomfortable, anything that's going to trigger you. I promise you, there's nothing in this world that I want more than for your own safety and comfort. So please, if anything about that is going to bother you, turn it off. If we start talking about it and you get uncomfortable and you don't want to hear it, turn it off. It's okay. We got 68 other episodes and many more to come for you to choose from. So I'm excited to bring this episode to you. Jackie is one of the most fun and hilarious people I've ever met. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. All right, I will talk to you soon. Have a beautiful week. Hi, friends. I'm so excited to welcome my friend Jackie to the podcast. Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You're so delightful. I wish you guys could see. She's taken it off now, but I get to see her. You have to describe the headband. What was it?
It's a leprechaun. So we're recording St. Patrick's Day. And yes, I've got my rainbow little leprechaun horn with the shamrocks.
I'm sad in my life that I don't get to have that because it is absolutely adorable. We are chatting today. Jackie is, of course, one of my amazing clients. We wrapped up a couple of months ago, right? It's been a couple of months?
Yeah.
January-ish?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let Jackie share a little bit about her story. And as usual, the goal of this podcast is to, number one, explore how different everybody's story is, but also the impact of coaching and reaching out for help whenever you need it. So I know I gave a trigger warning at the beginning of the episode. I want to give one last one. We will be discussing aspects of termination for medical reasons, TMFR. If that bothers you at all, I promise you it's okay. Skip this one. We got 68 other episodes you can listen to. I promise. All right, Jackie. So tell us a little bit about where you are right now, your journey so far, all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, I kind of think of my journey. I refer to probably one of your podcasts and just the metaphor of life of the roller coaster. So it's been about a 3-year roller coaster for us, and starting probably around age 35, got married, wanted to jump right in and have a family. Things seemed like they were going along. I think we got pregnant actually 4 months after we started trying. So I thought, okay, we're good. And then the roller coaster kind of took a little dive. We had a miscarriage, found out at my screening ultrasound. So that was probably like one of the hardest things I think I've ever really gone through as far as grief. I've been lucky. I haven't really experienced too much grief until that point. Kept going on that roller coaster ride. And I think it was about 6 months by that point. And because I'm, the geriatric pregnancy, we thought, okay, let's go to the doctor and see what's going on. Kind of got, fertility doctor referral. And I think I actually got pregnant around 6 months again, naturally, but that ended in a miscarriage as well, unfortunately. So then we're with the doctor. Okay, we've had 2 miscarriages. Like, can't we get some help? Can we get on to the IVF list? Not yet. You have to have 3 apparently. So
because you're in Canada, correct?
I am in Canada. Yes, I'm in Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of how they gauge things, especially because we do have funding available here. So after the second kind of looking in on what we could do, I mean, we had another natural pregnancy, another miscarriage. So like I said, it sounds like very doomsday, but I think for listeners as well, I like to say, like, there's a lot of good things that happened in this time as well. So it truly is that roller coaster, obviously handling a lot of grief and stuff along the way too, but it's both. Yeah. So then at that point, we were able to get help. So we were with our fertility doctor and we had an IUI, and our first IUI was successful.
Wow.
And amazing. Yeah. Like, I've had friends who are in, have had many more. So it can be a journey there. So I get that journey as well. But yeah, super lucky. Thought, great, first one. Things were rolling along. Everything looked good on our ultrasounds and heart rates and everything. And my husband and I decided I would say pretty early on, maybe even like when we were dating, we both knew we wanted kids, but we talked about, what if there were genetic abnormalities, what we would do in that situation. So we had decided we would do the Harmony screening test to determine what was going on. And yeah, that probably was the next biggest grief moment in my life when we got the call from our clinic that, our baby had genetic abnormalities. They would go over that with us. It was still a decision. I grapple with that, I think, still, because part of me feels like the decision was already made, but there was still a decision at that time. And it's the worst decision you ever have to make. I've got my Kleenex handy.
Always necessary when you talk to a coach. Yes.
Yeah. We found out that the baby was a boy. I think finding out that was important to me, just so that I could put a name. And so we named him Thomas Daniel. And I know in some of your other podcasts, you talk about like not having really a formal grieving process for that. So we were able to plant a flower that comes up every spring around his due date, which would have been in May. So that date's coming up again soon. Tough times. Then I kind of, at that point, then obviously we had testing done, genetic testing to see other things that were going on, and decided IVF was probably our best route so we could test the embryos. We've done 1 round of IVF, and amidst that roller coaster, obviously the undercurrent of the pandemic, my husband's younger brother died suddenly. So it's been a crazy year or two. IVF first round, we were able to get, I think we had 8 tested, 4 that I'm trying to recall now. It's getting all hazy. But anyway, we were left with 2 embryos. That's the bottom line. So that was great. Okay, we have a backup. Unfortunately, the first embryo, the 3 to 5% chance that it doesn't survive the thaw, that happened to us. So I felt like starting to be a bit of like going against all the statistics. My baby gets genetic abnormalities. We get the 3 to 5 chance thaw. So a little frustrating, but we did have 1 good embryo left to transfer. Unfortunately, that one did not transfer. Again, another little grief allowance.
That happened when we were working together.
Yes.
Right before the first or right after the first transfer, I should say,
Correct.
Was when you reached out.
Yep.
And so we had already been working together for a couple of months, for a month and a half or so, by the time we hit the second transfer, which I thought was a really good opportunity for us to kind of gear up for any potential fallout that might have occurred.
It definitely was. And just the timing of when I found you. I think I found you when I was kind of seeking out going into IVF, and I just was looking at podcasts and I found that one and I loved the name and drew me in. So listened to a few and I was this is exactly what I need. Right now we are actually, we just started our second round of IVF. So here we go again. That's where we are today. I'm actually quite literally waiting for my blood work results from this morning to see if I'll be starting injections.
The big pull the trigger, get the injection started.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I love that you mentioned geriatric pregnancy because I think all of us cringe.
Yes.
Geriatric pregnancy or advanced maternal age, which I am. And so every time I see that in my chart, I'm like, oh, F all of you all the way off. Anyway,
pretty much.
But there are elements that we can pull from, it might not be the whole story that we can resonate with, but we pull elements, right?
Definitely.
The multiple losses, a decision that I wrote the podcast about regret not too long ago. I think that was about 5 or 6 weeks ago after this airs. And you were probably one of the primary figures that were in my brain when I was writing that, because regret was something that we came up against over and over and over.
Definitely.
Understandably so, right? You were faced with a horrible decision that none of us want to ever face. And the emotional fallout, the emotional weight of that, even because Thomas would be 3 this May, 2, 3.
My due date would have been May. So no, just coming up.
Okay.
My first loss would have been 3.
When I was writing and recording the episode on regret, one of the things that came out of a very specific, very emotional conversation that we had was that regret will never help you find peace. And that was something that you and I talked at length about for multiple sessions, was almost this idea of having to punish yourself to kind of earn something out of that process. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that really resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, what just came up is sort of that punishing and not deserving. I'm having bad luck, so to speak, because, I don't deserve it because I made this decision, or, the kind of the same concept of, your body's failing you. And it's just, I shouldn't be a mother. Maybe it's a sign that cycle of punishment for sure.
Like, I remember so many times that we kind of got into the trappings of, that was my one shot. And you can always follow the logic, right? It makes sense based on how our society and culture treats these things. And then the time urgency, the time scarcity that we all experience feels like it kicks off the moment we turn 35. I know it for sure did for me.
Yep.
The moment it was just like tick, 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 got really loud. But I think that there is this idea of, I had my shot. That was it. I ruined it. I've ruined my life. We make these, not that it was a little decision or a small decision. We're never going to minimize that, but it's just that repeat cycle of punishment. I regret this and I hate that I regret this, but and moving past that. So talk a little bit about some of the work that you did in releasing some of that. Now, again, audience, I want to make sure we are very clear. And this is not something that goes away like turning on or off a light switch. This is something that Jackie worked on before we met, and she's continued to work on after we've met. So this is a long process of letting go, finding peace, things like that. So I just want to make sure that it's clear. We didn't solve this problem in a couple of sessions, but talk a little bit about where you are in that emotional journey.
Well, I just think it's funny that you say that, and that you kind of had me in mind with the Regret podcast, because, I needed it. I think the day I listened to it, I was kind of back into that funk. So you learn and you kind of go on and things happen, you kind of forget, and then something triggers you a little bit and you're kind of right back to that square one. So yeah, the day I listened to Regret, it was like, yep, I needed to hear this today, and punishing is not going to help me. And I cycle through feeling, okay, compassion, compassion, compassion versus, what have I done? What if that really was my only shot at having a child, even if there would have been struggles and, given our journey leading up to it, I think we needed to have a healthy pregnancy, a healthy baby. But what if that was my only chance? And I just threw it away. It really does cycle. And I think, unfortunately, constant work, because the grief ball in the box. I think a lot of people are familiar with that metaphor. It gets smaller with time, but when it hits, it's still hard. So there's certainly times that it hits and it's hard, and I have to listen to your podcast again and channel our talk.
And I love that you are reminding us that it is a cycle. Like, there is a cultural and a social belief that, you know, based on how our society regurgitates the 9 steps of grieving, or the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yeah.
I always get it wrong. I studied it for many years, but I can't remember if there's 8 or 9 stages. That is a societal permutation that doesn't actually have any basis in how we actually grieve, which is why I think that my brain rejects it every time. It's like, there's 15 stages.
Definitely.
No, it can't possibly be. But it is a cycle because, and I think all of us have experienced, you know, we'll have stretches of really good days. And then a song will come on, or we're watching a TV show, or we're watching a movie, or someone says something. Or one of my friends who experienced a loss, she said it was 3 years later and it was a couple of months to go, but she was putting a calendar item in on her phone that happened to be the anniversary. And it was something very innocuous. It was like, pick up groceries or something like that. But just that small reminder was enough to kind of bring that grief to the forefront. And I mean, I think this is a perfect time to remind us that the cycling through of the grieving process is such an incredibly normal part of the grief experience. Kind of think of grief as something that just, when we've accepted it, that it just goes into this box and we never have to think about it again, right? But at the slightest, or the most overt, the most subliminal, that box can open right back up. So I really love that you're reminding us all that this cycle occurred. Like, it will probably occur to varying degrees for the rest of your life, but that doesn't mean that we have to punish ourselves every time.
Yes.
Right? Because it used to be, whenever that cycle would start, the punishment was almost automatic. What I got from what you were saying when you listened to that episode, which I'm so glad, knowing that that was what you needed, I think that's a perfect example of whatever you need, you will find, right? It will find you in that moment.
Definitely.
I think that just allowing ourselves to have a little bit of permission that we don't have to be miserable, that we don't have to be suffering. We can accept a feeling in that moment, like regret or whatever, and that be okay. You mentioned you found me through the podcast. What was it that made you decide to reach out for help?
I think the timing, as I sort of mentioned before, it was just the right time. I had gone through the miscarriages, starting kind of into the chapter of IVF. I just thought, you know what? I need a bit more support. I did have a counselor, and I still do. Encourage everyone to keep it up. Have both. I had both through my entire time with you, and it was great. I saw my counselor every 3 weeks, and I saw you every week. It was a good combination. But yeah, I just think leading up to that first cycle of IVF, I didn't know that much about it. I found myself kind of going to social media and, Facebook pages, and it's hard. I know that some people find a lot of support from them, and I think that if they do, that's fantastic. But I found myself being really, really wrapped into it, sucked into it, and it was kind of becoming a bit obsessive and toxic for me. Comparative, even on like how many losses people have had, or sharing grief stories. So yeah, the comparative suffering was just not helping me. And then the comparative IVF was not helping me either along the journey. So yeah, I think I just wanted a real human connection. And, from what I had seen of your podcast, or rather heard, I knew that you hit the mark on many of the topics. You scroll through your podcasts, and any given day you can pick one and it'll speak to you. So for me, that was just, it was just a natural fit. And I don't know how long I'd been listening before I finally decided I was going to do a mini session with you. And
that's right. We met on a mini session. That's right.
Yeah, we did ladder thoughts.
Love it. Ladder thoughts are the best. What struck me with you, and I love that you mentioned that you had previously and concurrently did counseling, because I think that there's belief that you have to do one or the other, or we always have these kind of limiting beliefs around how much help we can get or how much help we can seek. And I remember the conversation you told me you spoke to your counselor about coaching, and she was as excited, it sounded like, as I was, that you had two prongs of support.
Yes.
Again, it's never a competition between coaching and counseling. Our only goal is your safety, your happiness, your ability to thrive. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I have several clients who have at least previously experienced counseling. And honestly, those are kind of the ideal clients, because you guys already have a lot of coping mechanisms. You already have a lot of awareness. It doesn't exclude you from the category of coaching if you've never been to counseling. It's a way of thinking about things. So sometimes the concepts that I talk about are a little bit easier absorbed when you've already been exposed to things like cognitive behavioral therapy or talk therapy, something like that. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Correct.
What do you feel like was the most impactful part of our coaching together?
A lot of things, but I think for me, kind of a difference that I would find between the counseling and the coaching is sort of, it's a bit more work. It's a bit more hands-on. You know, you get out your chart and you're doing thought patterns with me. So it was kind of like a bit of a kick in the butt, where counseling, you're there, and it speaks to more, not necessarily what you want to hear always, but different methods, where I feel like the coaching you'll call me out on my bullshit, to be quite honest.
Lovingly, always lovingly.
lovingly call me out on my bullshit. So yeah, I think that was a bit more of like the hands-on work. And I mean, I'm still working on it. I did my 13 weeks with you, and I think that's important too. There's definitely tools that I've learned that help me, but I still go back to your podcast and I'll still re-listen to them. There's always more to work on.
Yes. A podcast script that I'm working on right now is basically like a checklist of how do you know if you're ready for coaching? One of the red flags is like, this is going to be a magic pill. I'm going to pay you money and all my problems are going to go away.
Yeah, exactly. I wish.
Me too. I would that would be an amazing thing that I could offer the world. But it's very much a two-way street, right? I've got to be present. Yeah. You've got to be present. And one of my favorite things about you is that it was always okay. I think you knew that it was a safe place to land, which is like my ultimate goal. No judgment zone. I hold space. It's okay if you cry. It's okay if you laugh. It's okay if you yell at me. It's not a problem. For you, what really resonated for me was that it was okay to be wrong. Whether it was you that was okay with being wrong about a particular thought or belief that you had, or, sometimes I'm not perfect. I think I'm a pretty intuitive coach, but I'm not perfect. If I start going down a route, you would look at me and you'd be like, no, I don't think that's it. Let's figure out where we are going. Right. So there was very much a mutual respect that we work on cultivating from the get-go, that it's okay to call me and tell me, this is not what I want to talk about, or this is not really where my head is at, but also being open to be like, oh, is it really? You're telling me you're fine, but literally everything about you says you're not. So I think both of those are really good. I love that so much. So you mentioned ladder thoughts. Is there a concept or a topic that really, really resonated for you?
Oh, there's so many and many that I kind of go back to. So I kind of feel like those would be the ones that have resonated with me, the ones that I keep going back to. Managing uncertainty, I think, is one that I listen to, I dare say, maybe not once a week, but you could, because it's applicable to so many things, not just waiting, but infertility, IUI, IVF. It's all a lot of waiting and uncertain waiting, and trying to live basically my last 3 years with that. And I think since finding that, some of those strategies, that's been very helpful, knowing that my life doesn't really have to stop. I can, like you say, even in your intro, to live, going through IVF and still live a good life kind of thing. I've hit pause a lot of times in the past, and it's just all absorbing. But, there's stuff in life, and I still want to enjoy my life. My my roller coaster sounds pretty sad and there's a lot of dips, but the ups have been good too. So I've been able, I think more recently, like been able to find that balance of that. The 2-week wait right now, I'm still waiting. Right now I'm actually waiting, and then waiting for the egg retrieval, waiting for, I think maybe it's in that podcast you talk about, it's kind of definite or not IVF and infertility. Like you have, it either works or it doesn't. It's you either respond or you don't. It's either positive or it's negative. And that, I think that concept. So managing that, the waiting. The other one I have to mention, because I feel like we talked a lot about it, was the drunk asshole.
Oh God, the drunk asshole. Mm-hmm.
Listening to ourselves more than talking to ourselves.
Otherwise.
And I find,
talking to yourself more than listening.
No, that's what I meant. We need to talk to ourselves more and we just listen to ourselves, right?
That's right. Yes, that one.
Got it. Okay. I haven't learned anything from you.
No, if you guys knew how backwards I get it on the calls when my clients are looking at me like, I don't think that's the way. No, because I have to check myself on that all the time. Yeah, because the drunk asshole we listen to, so we want to flip the script on.
Yes, exactly. So that compassion piece again, and you really, I know you've drilled it home, and I think it's so easy. I mean, you've drilled it home, but it's still really easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
So, when some of those drunk asshole thoughts come in, it's like, yep, okay, let's stop and like talk to ourselves a little kinder, be a little more understanding.
We don't permanently quiet or silence the drunk a-hole. Like, it's not possible to do that. I wish it was, but even the most seasoned coaches that I know still have a drunk a-hole sitting in the back of their brain just spouting off crap. The goal is to turn down the volume and have him talk less than normal. And so you mentioned the drinking game, compassion. Like I'm going to put out some merch. We got a whole thing, but yeah, that really is the key, because we will always, I don't like to use qualifiers like that. More often than not, we are our worst critic. Almost universally. And our brains are wired to do that. They're designed to do that. It's helped us stay alive for centuries upon centuries. But it doesn't mean that that's how we have to function all of the time. And so even if you just recognize that the drunk a-hole is the one who's talking and that it's not actually true, like even just by acknowledging and being aware of that, you're able to turn down the volume by like, okay, buddy, this is, 3:00 at a Cubs game and you're just wasted face in the stands and you're just spouting off crap. It's totally fine. I get why you're saying that. That's how we previously have always talked to ourselves, but we're not going to talk to ourselves like that now. And that's one of my favorite reframes. And you got really good at that. Like, okay, hold on.
Kind of.
You did.
I tried.
You did.
Turning down the volume was a concept we talked about almost near the end, like when we were kind of leaving things. The drunk asshole would come up, obviously, but yeah, keeping that volume down, because I think I really thought it needed to he needed to go away completely, so that the turning down the volume was kind of like a good revelation, because exactly it's hard to completely get him out.
Yeah, for some reason that bastard won't go. He just keeps coming back, and it's okay that he's there, right? I think that was a big thing, was that like there's this panic button that's hit whenever we start hearing that voice, that criticism, that judgment, that something's gone wrong. No, nothing's gone wrong. This is a part of my brain just as much as the compassionate part of my brain is. I just have to work a little bit harder to access the compassionate part than the instinctive part, which is just a bunch of drunk crap that comes out. And I love that we named him a guy.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, sorry, guys, if there's any listening.
I know. It's nothing personal. It's just, It just worked with the analogy. As we're kind of winding down, I love to share kind of our favorite memories of working together. So you go first. What was your favorite, like something that stands out, something that was funny, something that was revelatory, anything like that?
Well, we did our sessions often over my lunch, which was very convenient for me. And I definitely remember like doing some of the now cycles where you told me like I had pent up anger, I think. So I turned the camera off and like was doing high kicks and like punches and jumping jacks. So just the image of me doing that in my office was kind of amusing to me. And then I think, though, honestly, like one of my favorite memories, it's the same cycle of just feeling my feelings and letting myself feel them, was one of the nows when we talked about Thomas and needing to let some of that grief out, because I really hadn't. It was kind of in there. So yeah, you had me feeling my feelings, hand on my heart, and bawling my eyes out. Hand on my heart, bawling my eyes out. It was a special moment, really, and it felt that it was a needed moment.
Yeah, I absolutely love it when I get you guys, when we're processing a feeling and the feeling is like, I got to run away, or that's usually when the indication to do something physical is.
Right.
So I love it when I get to tell you guys, okay, go do 10 jumping jacks and 15 punches and all that stuff. I had a client who her husband caught her doing jumping jacks. She was like, she said, he looked at me like it was absolutely a nutter. It was just, it was hilarious. One of my favorite memories was around Thomas as well. And you had come to the call and we're really struggling with this like idea of never being a good mother because of that decision. And, you know, one of the things that we got to was maybe that decision, as terrible as it was the decision of a good mother. Because it can look so different for all of us. That was probably mine. Again, it's never a question of you guys have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. It's fine. You can disagree with me. You can do whatever you want, but just allowing yourself for a moment to believe something a little bit different. And I don't know that you totally bought into that premise. There was a little bit of a release of the guilt and some of the shame.
Yes, there was.
Do you remember that?
I definitely remember that. And yeah, I remember posing feelings about it because I did feel there was still that niggle of, you know, guilt, punishment, shame. I haven't said that word much today. And I think that's really a huge, obviously huge piece of it. But that was eased by that idea of, if I was going to be a good mother, kind and compassionate, making that decision, not knowing what his life would have been. Yeah, I think it was helpful.
Good. Oh, I love this so much. Okay. Last question. One of my favorite questions. What advice do you have for your fellow IVF'ers?
My biggest piece of advice, and something that I actually have a coworker going through IVF too, and I keep sort of reminding her, is just one step at a time. It can be so overwhelming. There's so much information thrown at you. So I really focused on trying to kind of look at literally what is the next thing. So today I'm waiting for my blood work results that will tell me when I start taking injections, as opposed to, and then I'll take injections and then I have to start this other medication and then I have to do that and I have to mix these things. And oh my gosh, like it really overwhelmed me. So what's next? Okay, you have a counseling appointment. Great. So you're putting that effort into it. I think keep reaching out is my other big piece of advice. Don't be afraid to get counseling or talk to Emily.
I didn't pay her to say that. She
didn't. I definitely would vouch for you, because it can be lonely. Stick to friendships and find the people that go to the right people when you need them, because everybody can't be everything for you. So, you know, even in your own relationships, sometimes maybe you need that friend who just listens, or maybe you need advice and you go to your mom or whatever it might be.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much.
I can't not say it, and I already did, but limit your social media. Just try, because like comparing how many eggs and asking how many this and this and this, it doesn't matter, because ultimately, like, you could have one embryo and it's fine and it works, versus the person that has two and you never know. So
I think I'm going to do a whole episode on that topic itself. I think there's so many beautiful aspects to that type of community, but there are also a lot of really limiting things to that community as well.
Yeah, I think putting filters on it even.
Yeah.
Until I got rid of it, I didn't realize how much it was occupying my time and how much I was looking at it. So maybe you're not on 3 pages. Maybe you're just on one.
Yeah. No, it's a really good
found. And maybe it's a local group or something a little more connected.
Oh, I love that. And yes, one step at a time. We feel so out of control when we try to plan for the rest of the cycle or the rest of your sometimes life.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I love that.
It doesn't stop.
No. In fact, the further along we get, sometimes the more out of control we feel because we're so much further away from that. So I love that advice. I absolutely adore you. I'm so glad that I got to hang out with you again. And I'm so glad that everyone gets to hear your story because I think it's such an important aspect. All of us feel regret. And just if one person gets to hear that it doesn't have to be so hard, you're going to grieve. That's going to be the process. And the cycle is okay. If you're cycling through one thing, cycling through another, that is part of your process. That's part of your growth. You're not doing anything wrong. And it's okay to find peace, even if maybe you wish it didn't happen that way or, whatever that looks like. So thank you so much for being here. Guys, this is Jackie. She's amazing. And I just love you all. Just love you all.
Back at you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.